The degree of coercion became really clear to me after I had received my first dose of the vaccine, and I had an ongoing medical problem under investigation. I was denied my application for a medical exemption. I was denied accommodations that were supposed to be guaranteed to me. Hi, my name's Justin Bulich. I'm a first-year law student at Osgoode Hall. And this year, in February and March of 2022, I sued York University over my being de-enrolled from classes under their vaccine mandate. I was de-enrolled from classes in February. At this time, I had already begun filing for an injunction to stay my de-enrollment. So upon being de-enrolled, I also filed for a lawsuit against York University. We settled the case rather quickly, but I missed about 2 weeks of classes, and the terms of my writing the exams continued to be up in the air. I didn't receive a second dose of the vaccine because I am still undergoing testing for various symptoms which developed shortly after receiving the first dose of the vaccine. I was not sure that it would be safe, and I wanted confirmation from a medical professional that it would be safe for me to take a second dose of the vaccine before I did so. However, the testing and so forth took such a long time, and York was not willing to grant me the extra time or to grant me accommodations in order to stay enrolled in classes until I saw my testing through to the end and could get an opinion from a medical professional after determining what was the root cause of my symptoms. Shortly after I received on the same day actually, I had an elevated heart rate after walking up the stairs, which is unusual for me. I'm in pretty decent health. I was in better health before the lockdowns, but I used to compete on an athletic team. I rode my bike out for volunteer work. I had several physical jobs. I'm not someone who gets an increased heart rate just from walking up a flight of stairs. In the days that followed, I had occasional spikes in heart rate accompanied by chest pain, and about a week later, the chest pain was so intense, I felt like I was having a heart attack. I went to the emergency room at Sunnybrook Hospital. They performed a few tests on me, but the symptoms had lessened by the time I got through the waiting room and was able to have the tests, so they just recommended that I see my family doctor. Eventually, a couple months later, I was able to see a cardiologist, and the cardiology readings indicated high blood pressure and sinus tachycardia. So I've been sent back for further testing at another cardiology location. They've ruled out hypertension, but have found that I have an irregular pulse, and this is several months after receiving the first dose of it. I initially filed for a judicial injunction to stay my de-enrollment from classes at York University until testing was completed. But while I was in the process of filing for the injunction, I was de-enrolled from classes anyways. York University had been made aware that I was filing for an injunction. So after this, I also filed a lawsuit against them. After some negotiation, we dropped the suits, we reached a settlement, and I've been re-enrolled in classes. It's been very difficult for me to form relationships with my fellow students, especially because I've had to participate in classes only remotely. I haven't got the chance to interact with any of my classmates in person. Furthermore, I'm aware that most of them are very much for mandates, and if anything, they are frustrated that York University is now beginning to give signs of easing up on them. I am definitely not very popular with my classmates. It's difficult to talk to most of them, and to my professors as well. When I initially reached out to my professors at the beginning of the winter term, telling them my problem, that I might be de-enrolled, that I was having medical issues that were under investigation, I only had one professor that got back to me. Most of them just simply ignored me, and I received a message from the administration telling me not to contact my professors. It's really frustrating. I had high hopes for being a law student at Osgoode. It's quite a well-respected university, and I've known one of the faculty there. I had been really excited, but I've been let down by the institution, and there's been a lot of frightening things going on in the legal community, and I've had a long struggle with depression throughout my life, and this has certainly affected that. I have been living with depression and managing it on my own for quite some years, but this was a huge blow to that, with the isolation increased by being part of a community that was disrespected. In classroom discussions, when I was able to take part in them on Zoom, most of my classmates were outraged at, for example, Djokovic refusing to comply with the mandates for the tennis open in Australia. So there's certainly not a whole lot of sympathy that I felt, and just the awareness that most people didn't align on this issue with me, that most people weren't willing to have a conversation about it. I'm not anti-vax. I took the first on my own, and I had severe medical consequences. So York has stated that they are going to pause their vaccine mandate after April 30th. However, Osgoode Hall's vaccine mandate is ongoing until May 4th, which is the end of the Osgoode Hall examination period. So I still don't have a place to write exams, even for those last 4 days of the Osgoode exam period after York's mandate is paused. There have been no assurances that things will go back to normal. Every communication about pausing this mandate has been very clear that it is merely a pause. They may decide to reinstate it at any time. They are exhorting people to receive a full series of, regardless of the status of their mandate. I don't think that this kind of intrusion into people's lives is ever warranted. The degree of coercion became really clear to me after I had received my first dose of the vaccine, and I had an ongoing medical problem under investigation and still was not permitted to come to campus. I was denied my application for a medical exemption. I was denied accommodations that were supposed to be guaranteed to me under the law of Ontario and under the Code of Conduct of York University and Osgoode Hall. And the mandates are not over. People are still affected by these. The fact that universities are holding on until April 30th or May 4th means that people who have been de-enrolled in a similar situation to me are not able to write exams. In many cases, they do not have their tuition refunded. Universities have taken a huge amount of money from these people and have deprived them of their contracted schooling. I have not a whole lot of confidence in the legal system, but I feel as though I have a duty to help people as much as I possibly can. The legal system is an arcane and barely navigable monstrosity built upon 18th century British Hobbesian ethical philosophy. It doesn't make sense, and it's just a whole pile of laws and regulations that you need a trained lawyer to be able to navigate. So even the good parts of the legal system are not accessible to most of the population. And the inaccessibility of it is just what has created so many problems. And in the case of the universities and their creative interpretation of provincial mandates, I think in large part it's due to them trusting that average people do not understand how the law works or cannot afford a lawyer to fight a case for them. I'd like to say that for anyone in a similar situation to me, there is hope. I settled my case. There are similar cases happening across the country for people in similar situations. You don't have to just give up and assume that you will lose, or assume that the universities or employers or whoever is acting against you is fully within their legal right. That's a matter for the courts to decide. Amity is about friendship. It's about finding a group of people. You don't have to agree on anything. It's just recognizing humanity in everyone else. It's about happiness in being together and being part of the human race, the human experience.